Welcome back to Beauty Marks Podcast, a space where we embrace our marks acquired through our journey. My name is Elizabeth Savillon, and welcome back to another episode of this podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. And I wanted to actually read a review that someone left, which I am so grateful for. For those of you guys that haven't left a review, I actually read them and I care about what you have to say. And so Ashley Hernandez said, I've been a listener since 2020 and I absolutely love the Beauty Marks podcast. There's always something to relate to or learn from in each episode. This podcast has brought me a lot of comfort, wisdom, and encouragement. Elizabeth is a great host and often has great guests joining in as well. I love that she's not afraid to be honest about her experiences and perspectives, especially as a young professional woman of faith. This space was much needed and I'm so grateful for it. So thank you, Ashley. I really appreciate that. And honestly, all the comments and suggestions that you guys have, I always take it into account. And if you want to hear certain kind of topics or more episodes, I appreciate it. If you want to support this podcast, you can do so in the link show notes. And also, I am grateful to be at Hi Hello Lab Studios in downtown Orlando. If you have any just content creation, any creative needs, make sure to check them out. They just expanded and it is a great studio space that you can come for video, podcasting, just anything that you need filmed. Anything like that, they are the place for it. So on today's podcast episode, I wanted to be honest and open because after launching what was kind of the scariest episode that I've done, which was pretty much almost 3 years into my podcast, I am turning 3 years next month in June, and just prepping to record that, I feel like it was emotionally draining. And so if I'm honest, since I recorded that episode and posted it, there has been a lot of backlash, a lot of family situations that have come up, and I have felt mentally and emotionally very drained. And usually when that happens, I naturally start withdrawing or isolating, or it's very hard for me to kind of process things publicly or to try to pretend oh, all is okay. And I do it for a little bit until I can't anymore. And I have been struggling. Honestly, it's been just mentally, feels like I did something big and it was something that I know needed to be said and needed to be told, my story. And I am such a big person and that always shares about the power of sharing your story. But there were a lot of obstacles that came out of it. And there was a lot of things that kind of felt like I opened a can of worms and just started unraveling a whole bunch of stuff. And it has been hard to navigate it, within family and just my thoughts, to be honest, and just outside noise. And so what felt kind of the best thing for me, it ended up kind of feeling very draining. And also I am, I do believe in the spiritual world. So I also feel it's a spiritual attack over me since I've done it. Cause the enemy's she said it, she put it out there. And there were so many people that that wrote me and shared that that has happened to them and that they know someone that has gone through that. And it was so heartbreaking to see how many people have experienced something like that in their life. And so I definitely felt I knew it was going to have some challenges, but it's definitely been a lot of challenges after posting it. So it's just been something that I've been working through. And it's to have both things happen, exciting things happening, but also mentally and emotionally, you're not doing well. And it could be the Enneagram, or it could be my personality or all of that. But I'm someone that is always trying to achieve or wants to get things done or wants to do things right or and I'm very hard on myself, and that's definitely a perfectionism thing. And I can be very hard on myself with not trying to understand or have grace with myself when I'm going through a lot of things all at once. And so when I was thinking about what has happened in the past few months, it's been a lot of transitions, it's been a lot of adjusting, and me telling my story and that bringing up stuff within my family dynamics that kind of felt wow, I don't know, it was just overwhelming. And I was trying to put on a front or a straight face to for everyone around me. I was trying to like hold it together. Even like, to be honest, the weekend of like my sister's wedding, it was very difficult. And a lot of stuff happened with immediate family, a lot of conflict. And it was hard to like not let it get to me. And I would just be like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And then literally on the way back from the wedding, it was like an hour and a half away, and I was like driving by myself back, and I just like broke down in tears. And I felt like it was like the first moment that I really like allowed myself to like feel everything that had just happened in the past 2 weeks. And so that's something that I know that I do, and I've shared on here. Like, I do have the tendency of going like high functioning in like anxiety and depression. So it's like I'm still doing, but it's like I'm not stopping. And then until I get to the point that I feel like I'm gonna break or I'm going to like snap. And that's something that frustrates me, because as someone that has talked about mental health and I've been in therapy and I am in therapy, I still struggle to like feel human. And I still struggle to like feel like it's going to be a journey and things are going to come up and life is going to happen. And I know there's power in like being grateful and positivity and all of that, but I've definitely had to kind of be honest with myself of like where I'm at right now and being okay with that, and kind of validating what has happened that has created this of what I feel. So after everything happened, my sister's wedding, which is, again, exciting, amazing. And like, it didn't completely take from that. Like, I was present there, but I know I was like holding in a lot of stuff. And so once it happened, and the adjusting of like my parents, like with now feeling like more empty nesters, and like, like their baby got, married. And then it's kind of like me navigating the emotions of like her getting married too, like, which I was fine. But it's like I feel like whenever something happens and you're like at a low, it's like everything else that happens after that, it can be escalated. And it, like, all of a sudden it's a huge deal. And all of a sudden you feel like you see something, you see a post on social media and it really affects you, when maybe if you were doing better emotionally, or if you're a little bit more stable, then you kind of can just be like, oh, like whatever. I was very vulnerable at that moment. So it was just, things were like piling up. And so I just felt like low energy. I felt like a sense of like sadness or numbness too, during those weeks. And I was like trying to push through, like, okay, making my schedule busy, doing what I had to do, like things gotta get done, like regardless. But it's like I had like no, like it was just hard to focus and everything. So I was just like beating myself up, like, Liz, what are you doing? Like, and then I would go on social media and then it would be like, why you're doing this wrong, or you should be doing this more, or like, this is in your 20s, like you're lazy if you do this. It was like all the videos that were targeting like my negative self-belief were like all the ones that were coming up. And I'm like, what the heck is happening? Like, it was just a lot during that time. And so, and during that time, I mean like 2 weeks ago. So it's not that it's been so easy to navigate that, but I know that my message is always about like not trying to portray something that is not the full picture, and I feel like on social media, or even like around people that we love or we know, it's like we want to seem like, don't worry about me, like I'm good. And it's like, it's true when they say that it's like, just because you're strong, it doesn't mean that it isn't heavy, like what you are experiencing or what can happen. And so sometimes, I know for me, I've tried to like protect other people's emotions, or like they're just going through a lot, so I don't want to like pour out my stuff because their stuff is harder, or like, kind of putting your what you're experiencing, like not validating it. And so just because someone might be experiencing something that's hard or worse, but like those people love you and they do care about you. So I had a moment with my best friend that I was like, hey, I know I told you, like when you asked me, I told you I was going through a rough patch. And so she's like, sending prayers, like, I'm there for you. But like, once I told her everything that I had like been experiencing the past like 2 weeks, she's like, Liz, like, why didn't you tell me? Like, you could have called me. Like, I know I have like my stuff and I know I'm busy, but like, I am there for you. Like, that's what friendship is for. It's not just for you to like, you don't know, like, so, and I'm already like perceiving that it's like she has a lot going on, so I don't want to burden her, when it's like, no, friendships, like that's what it's for. Like it's for good times and bad times. And so that was a self check on myself of just kind of like the me being a little bit too like downplaying myself, to be like, you know what, people perceive me because I'm usually the person that people come for advice or comfort, or they vent to me, and so sometimes it can seem like that you're like you're the all together friend, and even like this podcast. And if you're ever like in a helping field, and I hear that so much, that it's like if you're ever like trying to like help or encourage people, sometimes like the weight of that is like so heavy, because it's like you're taking on, but then it's also like you still need people that also are like that for you, and that you can like be open and be like, I'm just gonna vent and tell you all these things, but sometimes like from the outside, people can think that because you encourage or you help or you put things together, or you, from the outside it looks like you're all together, then they're just like, oh, she's good, like she's she got it together, when it's like, no, I'm like holding on by a thread. I'm mentally not well right now, and so I had to be honest with myself for that. To be honest, it was very vulnerable, and even with someone that I love, that I know is there for me, but it's something that I have been struggling with, to not try to bother someone. So that is something that in the past few weeks I've had to lean on, like, God. I even took like some days to not listen to certain music, to only listen to like worship music, and to like really be like, Lord, I need hope. Like I need to like not be in my head. Like I don't know why I'm having, like I was having like dreams. I was having like I just was having trouble sleeping. All these things were happening all together that just felt even heavier. And I just felt like it was like a spiritual attack, and it was also like just stuff that I'm navigating through, like kind of resurfacing trauma that happened so many years ago. And like now that my family's dealing with it, it kind of feels like it just happened again. And that's not what I wanted. To be honest, I didn't think that it was going to kind of like reopen some old wounds, and that's what it did. And ultimately, I know that me sharing my story, if that brings certain people to find healing and to finally deal and confront things, like that's the freedom that they need. And I know that that's great, but the process to get there, I feel like it gets worse before it gets better. And if you have ever been through that, you know that it is difficult walking through your own healing journey, and plus also trying to support other people that are on their own. So that's kind of what's been going on emotionally with me, and just vulnerable moments that I felt like all these things were just like adding on top. And I just was like trying to like keep it together, that I'm like, I'm fine, everything's fine. And like people would ask me like, you good? Like everything? I'm like, yeah, all's good, because I'm like on the verge of like tears. And then when after like my sister's wedding, it was funny because I caught the bouquet. And I'm telling you, this year I have been like more open than ever to like date and meet people. And I started dating. I did the dating apps, and I had a good experience, but I felt like I just needed to take a step back. And so like I'm not talking to anybody. I'm just like, I'm open to honestly meeting people in real life if it happens organically. But I took myself off of that, and it has been like an adjustment, because I'm like, I'm not trying to use someone else to like deal with my stuff. So when it would get like overwhelming at home, or it would get overwhelming in like, I was like, man, it would be nice to like have someone here. Like it would be nice to have someone that I can just like go and hang out with, or like they can support me, or like they can like encourage me. That's not just a friend, because like I talk about that friendship is important, and I have like my people, but it's also the feeling of like, dang, like I do desire like a partner. And I feel like this year more than ever, which is like me being open, has been more of like, I do desire like a partner in a relationship. And like, when is that going to happen? And then I caught the bouquet at my sister's wedding, and everyone's like, oh my God, you're next. Like they're coming. And like, they're just like saying all this stuff. And I'm just like, where am I going to meet him? Like, where he at though? Like, and so I felt like it was just adding on to like me feeling like, dang, like when is that going to happen for me? And then on that vulnerable day, I went on social media, and I'm going to be honest, I saw like two people that had been through divorces like recently. They're like with someone else. And I was like, yo, they got in and out of a relationship and in another relationship before I even got into one more. Like, and it's been years for me since I was in a relationship. And I know that for some people that might be silly, but like I also know for some people, like that's the reality. Like you do start comparing. And even though you don't know the whole story, you don't know what their journey has been like, you don't know how that looks like, but that little thing that like when you were triggered or when you were vulnerable, it's like it does get to you. And so I share this because I know that it does resonate with someone. And literally, it's like been a topic that has come up so much recently. So like I thought I was like alone in this, and I'm like, I feel like this, and this. I started like because I'm like processing a lot of stuff that had just happened. Plus, on top of that, I'm just feeling like, okay, the comparison, like vulnerable to the comparison game, or like the feeling behind, or like even the self-talk to myself. And then we had our She Cultivates brunch. And to be honest, I was so not feeling myself. And that was something else too, because I'm usually the one that like leads or like the more naturally outgoing person. And I just felt so out of it. And I was like trying to pep talk myself, like, Liz, get it together. Liz, this is like, you have to show up, like you have to show up like your perfect self. Like you have to show up with the energy, like you have to set the tone. Like I was putting all of this pressure on myself like that morning. And I just was like, dang, like, why do I do that to myself? Like, why do I like shame myself into change instead of like have grace with myself and understand of like all that's going on is why this is how you feel, but also like ask for help, ask for support. So like that morning I was telling my sister and she's like, why don't you just tell one of the other girls to like lead it? And I'm like, you're right. Like, you're right. I need to do that. And so I was open and honest, but that took a lot out of me. So when the brunch was happening and I was like in my head about like, okay, you need to get it together. You need to like be your best self, like show up as your best self. You know, like you're meeting new people, like you're the one that sets the tone. Like I was putting all this pressure on myself. And my sister's like, why don't you just ask for help? Why don't you ask and tell someone instead of just taking that onto yourself? Like, who told you that you have to be like the one with the most energy and all of that? I'm like, it's because like my personality, like I know everybody else is like more introverted and I don't want to bother or discomfort people. And I'm like, where am I getting this? Like, who told me this? And it's like, it's myself. Like, I'm being hard on myself. Like, no one told me that I need to have it all together all the time, but it's me. And so I feel like it's been me versus me, to be honest. And most of us like can relate to that it's like, it's not even that other people are saying stuff. It's like stuff that we're telling ourselves and the expectations that we have of ourselves, which is like unrealistic. Because if my friend told me, hey, this is what's been happening the past few weeks, this is how I feel, I'll be like, girl, don't worry about it. Like, I got it. Like, what do you need? Like, I would show up for her. But why can't I show up for myself and give myself that same compassion? And so that has been something that I'm learning. To be honest, I'm not perfect and I don't have the answers for like the process that I'm in right now, because it's like a new season is bringing up a lot of old things, and it's like trying to like process my emotions, but also like help someone else process theirs, plus stuff that I'm just navigating with my own self that sometimes makes me feel like I need to do more or I need to. And it's like I'm working through that. So at the brunch, all went well. You know, my fear of like not being perfect, like that just went out the window. But the brunch went well, and the topic that we talked about was about what season you're in. And literally 6 girls said that what they're struggling with right now is that they feel behind in life and they feel like they're constantly with just negative self-talk towards themselves because they're looking at others, or they just feel like what they had in their head of like their timeline is not what they're seeing now. So they get frustrated. And it just felt like, wow, Liz, you see, like, why were you being so hard on yourself? Like, all these people here are all dealing with the same thing. And you really, like, for the past 2 weeks have been feeling like you're the only one that's experiencing that. And like, you need to have it together and all of that. And so like, we all went around and it was like really like comforting. And it was really what I needed, because I'm like trying to like be all good, you know? But it's like, once they were saying the same thing, I was like, oh, like, I felt like it was like, like the pressure's off. Like I can just truly like be open and be myself right now. And so that topic has come up so much. And we went around and we were sharing like what affects us when it comes to that. And some said like social media, some said it was just like, the timeline. And then we all said like what can help us was like us having grace with ourselves, speaking to ourselves better, like not being on social media so much and not like always just watching other people live their life, but like experience and like be grateful for like our own. And it was like, okay, so we know these things, but like, how do we apply them? And like, how are we going to like walk in them, because I feel like it's so much, you can get on social media, you can hear all this advice, but personally it's like a personal journey with ourselves, like within ourselves, and like what we allow in our head and like what story we're telling ourselves, which is like ironic because that was the episode that came out like 2 weeks ago. It was about limiting beliefs. And as I was reading that book and even preparing for that interview, that's what I felt like as she was talking, I'm like, Liz, that's you. Like this podcast is like, I mean, I know it helped people, but like it honestly helped me because I'm like, this is like so timely of stuff that I'm experiencing. And it's like, who told me that I need to have it together? And it sometimes feels like why I feel that way is because like since I was young, I was always performing. Like I was always excelling in school. I was always expected to do really well at everything. Like it was kind of this expectation that was put on me that then it just came so naturally for me to do it to myself. And so for me to fail has been so hard to manage when in reality, like failure is like what helps you and like roadblocks is what shapes your character and challenges is like what helps you to grow. But ultimately, how I have seen it, it's like, it's hard for me to grasp and it's hard for me to like experience that. And so that's stuff that I'm working through and I do not have the answer. So this is not a podcast to tell you like, this is what you're going to do to be perfect. Like, no, I'm walking with you in this because I'm in that journey. And so since that topic came out and we talked about it and I've been experiencing it and I also posted it on social media and I wanted to share some of the responses just so that you can relate and you can maybe hear your own thinking, what other people think. And it's like, well, I'm not the only one. And because that's what it felt like for me when people were sharing and people were telling me their own process. So the question was, do you struggle with comparison and feeling behind? 86% said yes, and 14% said not really. What do you compare yourself to? That was the question. And 43% of people said the timeline I had in my head for me. And I think that's like, I relate to that. And the second one was other people my age. So they compare themselves to like their age bracket. Or the other one, 27% said others on social media, which is then started the next question, which is, does social media influence comparison, even though you know that most people just show their highlight reel? And 89% said yes, and 11% said not really. The other question was, if you're honest, what would help you feel content where you are? 57% said mindset shift. 23% said still figuring it out. 11% said being less on social media. And 9% said different environment. So a big thing is about our mindset and like us versus us and the things that we're like struggling internally and the things that we're telling ourselves. So sometimes people can be telling us like, you're doing great, like look at all you've achieved and everything, but it's like within us, like the belief that we have or like how we see like the process of our own process or our own life journey. And the other question I asked was, where does this negative self-talk come from? And 77% said myself, 15% said my past mistakes, and 8% said what others have said about me. And in the past 2 weeks, when I have been kind of like in a deep dive of like, Lord, I need hope, like help me to like renew my mind, renew my thoughts, help me to see myself how you see me, because I do not see myself right now like that way, and I like need your help. Like I feel weak and I need you. And there was a devotional that I read that I feel like everything was just like aligning. That it said it can be perfectly acceptable to be unconventional. Every person's journey is different, and even if people take similar paths, they may not end up in the same destination. We can learn from each other's journey, but there isn't one right way. Just because it worked out for someone doesn't mean it can guarantee the same for yourself. Let God lead you the right way for you. Your journey is just that. It's yours. So listen to the desires that God has for you and the calling and what he's calling you towards. It is easy to be swayed by what society says, what you see on Instagram, what your parents tell you to do for your future. The list goes on. But today, carve out time to sit and listen to your own journey and find out what that is. And so there were just some questions that she said like to journal in there. And it was like, what is God calling you to do? What are you drawn to? When do you feel whole or the best version of yourself? What makes your heart happy? What are your passions? And what is the situation or place do you feel the most authentic and happy self? And so I like took the time to like journal. I went for a walk. I've been doing walks, which has honestly helped to kind of reset and to journal that out and kind of see like, okay, like let me shut off the noise of like social media and like all the pressure on the outside. Like what is really what God is leading me towards and what does my journey look like now, you know? We can really be so hard on ourselves that it's like we all can relate to that of feeling like I'm not where I should be. You know, I had a different idea in my head. And so I asked on Instagram, like, what are some struggles? And some people said, like, I feel behind in life. I'm 30, still living in my parents' house, finishing college, single. Why? LOL. Someone said, comparison, I struggle much. So now I've scheduled a break for myself every month. And I've noticed that when I get off social media, I am no longer struggling as hard. Someone said, something that has helped me is to compliment myself on one thing I liked about myself in the mirror every morning to combat what I feel about myself. Someone else said, comparing myself to me a year before to see the growth and reminding myself that I'm making progress. So it's looking back to see how far you've come. And us realizing that some things that we have prayed for, that we've wanted, we're actually living in. So it's like, who said that there's like a timeline for it? Someone else said, taking a walk in nature by myself to be present in life and internalize my feelings and understand it better. Someone said, digging deep and figuring out why I'm feeling triggered and how to change that mindset to something positive. More people said, staying busy with house projects, finding something that just brings you joy, getting out of the routine, doing gratitude journaling, and just figuring out ways to process and kind of like put in comparison of like what you're telling yourself and like the truth. So that's what my counselor told me to do. So like every negative thought that I get about like how lame I am or like how I'm not enough or like how I'm still lost or like me compared to someone else or like will I ever find my person, like any thought that I get, like put it on the left and then on the right, write what is true and what is something that is what God says about you and like what the word says, but also something that is contradicting or something that is actually the truth of what the promises are of what can happen, that you are enough, that God knows the desires of your heart and he does have someone for you and he is guiding your steps and leading the way and he's opening the door and he has great plans to prosper and to bless you and he's using all things for good, even the past mistakes and things that you walk through. So that has been the reframing process. So again, it's not to say this episode is to tell you that it's all okay, all healed, all good. No, it's like walking with you in this and understanding that you're not alone in that, because even though no matter who you see, like you can put that person and be like, that person has it all together. Like they have their own insecurities. They have their own issues. They have their own struggles that maybe they compare themselves to someone else that is at another level, And so it's trying to be grounded in the midst of when those things come, because those thoughts will come, but it's what we do with them and how we don't let them sit there to stop us from continuing doing what God has called us to do. And so something that I am moving forward to do now is being completely honest and open to my very close people of like those thoughts that come that are not true, and also being just stop trying to like overthink it to be like I'm bothering people. Like, no, like if I need to talk to someone, I'm going to call them, and then they will get back to me if they're busy. Like just putting myself to that place of being vulnerable and building that connection and being honest, and also giving myself permission to not have it all together and not have the answers, and truly leaning in on God and leaning in with my community to know that ultimately it's a journey, it's a process, and having the same compassion with myself that I deserve, and figuring out where that's coming from. Like, who's telling me that I need to do this, this, and this, or who's putting this time limit on me, And so it's like, I am doing great things. I have accomplished a lot of stuff, and I have still yet to see the best days, yet. So it's like, this is just a season, just like when hard times come, like we know that there's light at the end of this tunnel. Like that's the mindset that I'm focusing on. But I know it's going to take some time, and I know it's going to take some days. So I'm like taking certain things and just trying to reset myself and see how like the next few weeks will be. So that's the episode for today. I hope that if this encouraged you, then you can share it with a friend, or also write me out on social media and let me know your thoughts. We're all on this journey together and just working through. We do not have to have it all figured out. Like we don't. 20s, 30s, 40s, I feel like ultimately, even people that I've met that are like, I'm still pivoting, I'm still figuring things out. So it's like, it does get better though. And that's the hope that I'm holding on to, that, you can find support, you can kind of lean into the things that you're good at, and not let those things stop you from the great things that are before you. So make sure to share this with a friend, subscribe to this podcast, and I will see you guys next week.